Chapter 18. The Bitter Taste of the Future and the Fall of Jiang Guoping, 1974-1975. By the second half of 1974, the Red Guard's enforcement team was responsible for patrolling the north and south buildings of 6th High, asserting discipline with unyielding strength. The status of Class 7's Red Guards had reached an all-time high. Teachers previously referred to as the stinking old ninth, and who had endured years of humiliation and mistreatment from students empowered by Mao's revolution, viewed us with appreciation. They no longer saw students maintaining classroom order. They recognized us as protectors. For years, the government neglected them. The school administration seemed too powerless or too fearful to enforce order. But we, the Red Guards, were able to act. Thus, we swiftly dealt with the troublemakers. We exacted retribution, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. It felt as though the school had acquired a shadow police force, restoring a sense of fairness and justice that had been long overlooked. Teachers could finally teach again without fear of being humiliated, ridiculed, or physically attacked by students who had ruled unchecked for nearly a decade. Who would have imagined that almost 10 years after Mao's revolution sparked a period of chaos, students would take it upon themselves to reinstate the very order that the revolution had obliterated? It might sound absurd, yet it was inevitable. The pendulum had swung too far, and now, unbeknownst to anyone, it began to swing back. Could this be the initial indication that the Cultural Revolution was starting to wane? Possibly. Peculiarly, this felt like an extension of my personal mission, a mission that began as far back as kindergarten, opposing Chairman Mao. When I entered high school, we all sensed the storm was passing. The Lin Biao incident of 1971 had shattered many people's blind faith in Mao. Nobody believed in communism with the same zeal anymore. The fiery devotion of earlier years had cooled to indifference, and hanging over us all was the destiny that awaited us post-graduation, the countryside. Up to the mountains, down to the countryside. Those words had been drilled into us repeatedly. We had already been participating in work-study programs by our second year. Every year we spent 1 month in a factory and 1 month in the rural countryside. The message was unmistakable. There was no way out. Under Mao's ideology, every city high school graduate was destined to become either a farmer or a factory worker. University was not an option. There was no future beyond manual labor. From 1974 to 1975, our school dispatched us to the Forward Commune in Qingpu County, a rural area about 30 miles from metropolitan Shanghai, for agricultural labor training. This experience foreshadowed our unavoidable destiny. Our parents loaded our bedding and bags and sent us on a long bus ride. As we journeyed through Shanghai's vast expanse, the skyscrapers gradually gave way to the open countryside. From the town center of Qingpu County, we ventured further into the rural countryside. A narrow dirt road wound through endless rice fields, drawing us deeper into the commune's heart. Eventually, we reached a threshing area and were instructed to wait. Bags were at our feet, and we stood there, enveloped by an expanse of farmland stretching to the horizon. I glanced at my classmates. None of us said a word. It was the first moment we grasped how far we had journeyed. For the first time, we truly felt our powerlessness. Teacher Xiao returned with a middle-aged farmer, his sun-kissed skin and tattered, patched clothing revealing years of hard work. He guided us further into the fields along winding dirt paths until we arrived at a large, isolated house in the midst of nowhere.
"This is the boys' residence."
The girls were taken to a different location. We entered the house. The house featured thick earthen walls, its exterior adorned with white paint. Inside, it was vacant, merely a large open area with a dirt floor. It became clear instantly this was a grain warehouse, not a dormitory. It was merely a shelter with a roof. This would serve as our home throughout the entire month in the countryside. The commune supplied straw for bedding, which we arranged along the walls, covering the dry, brittle stalks with our bed sheets. This makeshift bedding created a rough circle in the warehouse, with 30 crammed inside like livestock. It felt distinctly primitive. On the second day, in accordance with the school's guidelines, Teacher Xiao took several of us, the Red Guard's leaders, to learn from the farmers. This aligned with Mao's vision of students gaining knowledge from workers and peasants. We reached a modest, aged farmhouse, where 2 farmers welcomed us. Their hands were calloused, and though their eyes appeared tired, they held a sense of amusement. They conversed in the local Qingpu dialect, their speech filled with laughter.
Oh, you're all students. What could you possibly learn from us?
What is there to gain? Farming isn't anything extraordinary.
They felt confused and recognized the absurdity of the situation. Farming wasn't an ideology to them. It was essential for survival. We were students masquerading as peasants, acting out a political fantasy devised by someone who had never toiled on the land. And yet this was our reality. The Cultural Revolution continued, yet its intensity was waning. Fear had given way to fatigue, while chaos had evolved into disillusionment. We were no longer the passionate Red Guard warriors of 1966, believing we were changing the world. By 1975, we had become survivors, anticipating the next significant historical shift, and history was already in motion. In that moment, beneath the expansive Qingpu sky, I came to an undeniable conclusion. Our long, tiring journey here, our so-called learning from the peasants, felt like a ridiculous charade. Yet surprisingly, I found joy in the countryside. I had always longed to visit my father's hometown, a rugged mountain village filled with rolling hills, clear streams, and nature's tranquil beauty. But this? Qingpu's farmlands seemed flat, endless, and unremarkable. They offered no excitement, breathtaking views, or secret adventures within the terrain. Still, despite its plainness, I immersed myself in it wholeheartedly. We undertook various farming activities throughout the day, including harvesting rice, carrying loads, winnowing grain, and spreading cow dung. However, all of this was merely symbolic. There were no quotas or genuine expectations. The farmers didn't regard us with seriousness. They understood that we were only here to learn in name, serving as a form of political theater rather than engaging in actual work. For many of my classmates, the most complex challenge was not the strenuous labor, but the pit toilet's dirty, foul-smelling holes that filled the air with an overwhelming stench. However, I found joy in shared meals at the large canteen. After a long day of work, even the most basic food was delicious. One day, I was tasked with purchasing rice and essential seasonings for the whole class with another student. 2 local farmers were assigned to row a boat and take us to a nearby water town for supplies. I was so excited. As we drifted along the narrow river, the boat rocked gently beneath us. The sun was warm on our faces, the dark green water rippling beneath the oars. The scent of damp earth and fresh water filled the air. I turned to the farmer steering the boat. "Uncle, can I go swimming?" They glanced at me, amused.
Can you swim? If you can, go ahead.
That was all I needed to hear. Without hesitation, I stripped off my clothes and dove into the river. The water was calm, refreshing, and alive. I swam alongside the boat, gliding through the current. Until now, I had only known the sterile, chlorinated pools of Shanghai, where I had practiced every stroke to perfection. But this? This was freedom. This was natural. This was refreshing. It somehow reminded me of Mark Twain's Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, of course, without the horror. After buying all the supplies, I turned to the two farmers when we reached the town. "Uncle, let me treat you to a meal." They froze. Their eyes widened, then broke into grins so vast their faces could barely contain them. It was as if no one had ever offered them something so simple. We found a restaurant by a stone bridge. It was a lively little place, with diners chattering and bowls and chopsticks clinking. "What kind of wine do you drink?" I asked. They hesitated. I didn't wait for an answer. I ordered 2 bottles of Red Star Ergutu. It was my first time purchasing liquor. That name, that bottle, would stay imprinted in my memory forever. We shared meals, savored drinks, and reveled in laughter together. By the end of the meal, their faces were flushed with warmth, and their words had loosened with the liquor. For them, it was a rare indulgence. Because under communist rule, urban and rural regions, even in the greater Shanghai area, remained starkly divided, almost as if they were separate worlds. It was so special that I had this moment of connection, real, human, untainted by politics. This was one of the happiest moments I had in the countryside. But not every memory was so pleasant. At night, in the warehouse-turned-dormitory, we had long free time between dinner and sleep. During this time, some students played cards or chess, others snacked and gossiped. And then some sought trouble. Boredom was dangerous sometimes. At first, they were playing around, pushing each other and laughing. But soon, the pushing turned real, and the wrestling turned serious. And then, it turned into a fight. And the worst thing possible happened. Zhang Guoping got involved. Zhang Guoping's straw bed was beside mine. All along, I had been his guardian, constantly observing, ensuring he stayed in line and didn't overstep, even in this remote countryside. For the most part, I had managed to keep him in check. However, that night, I faltered. I allowed my guard to drop. I brought a few books with me, and I was too absorbed in reading, and by the time I noticed, it was too late. Boom! A thunderous voice split the air. "Stop!" I looked up. Teacher Xiao stood at the center of the warehouse, his voice booming like a war drum. Chaos had erupted. Several students were attacking Zhang Guoping, and he was fighting back with brute force. Blood streaked across faces. Noses were split open. Eyes were swollen shut. 4 or 5 students were locked in combat, rolling across the dirt floor in a tangle of limbs, fists swinging wildly. And in the midst of it all, Zhang Guoping. I jumped up and rushed forward, shoving through the chaos. Zhang Guoping turned, his face twisted with rage. And then he swung at me. I caught his punch in midair. His massive fist slammed against my forearm, but I absorbed the force, twisting his wrist. With a hard shove, I forced him to the ground. Other Red Guards swarmed in, holding him down. The other fighters were pulled apart, their faces red with exhaustion, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. Teacher Xiao acted quickly, swiftly informing the local commune leaders. This had escalated beyond a simple schoolyard scuffle. It was labeled a serious bloody incident, a violation of Mao's revolutionary principles, and an affront to the vital bond between the Red Guards and the peasants. That night, the militia from the commune came in with long rifles. Their boots echoed on the dirt floor, and their expressions were stern and inscrutable. They took Zhang Guoping away. I saw Zhang being led away. For years, he had been the classroom's terror, the wild creature no one could control. But now, he was merely a man being taken into the darkness. Standing there, still catching my breath, I questioned whether he finally grasped this reality. The following day, while I rested in the warehouse, Teacher Xiao's voice sliced through the quiet atmosphere.
Zhenfeng Yang, come out for a moment.
I rose to my feet, shaking off the remnants of sleep, and stepped outside. The sunlight hit harshly, bouncing off the whitewashed walls. I squinted and scanned the area. There, beneath the outer wall, stood Zhang Guoping. He was no longer recognizable. The brute who had once towered over others, throwing his weight around with unchecked arrogance, now stood with his head hanging low, his shoulders hunched inward, his hands wringing together in a pitiful, nervous knot, his fingers twisted against each other like a child caught red-handed. His whole body radiated the fragile guilt of someone who had lost everything. I saw him this afraid for the first time in the last couple of years I had known him. As soon as he saw me, his head dropped even lower, his hands twisting more frantically. It was as if he had been waiting for me, hoping for me to arrive. Something stirred inside me, a strange, unexpected compassion for him. I stepped closer. "What's wrong with you now?" I asked. Zhang Guoping's lips moved, but no words came out. He stammered, hesitated, and swallowed hard. I sighed. "Don't hit people again, do you hear?" To my astonishment, he actually nodded.
Mom!
His voice was small, obedient. Then he finally spoke.
Can you save me?
Save you? What do you mean? His breath hitched. His hands twisted harder.
They won't let me go back. They want to lock me up. Can you save me?
For a moment, I didn't speak. Then, before I could even process what was happening, the militiaman stepped forward. The time had come. Zhang Guoping was escorted away. The militia had granted him this one last meeting, a final plea after he had repeatedly requested it. Perhaps he still believed I had the power to help him, but I didn't. Because this time it wasn't just a school fight. This time it had happened outside the school, in the countryside, where group fights were strictly prohibited. More importantly, Zhang Guoping was already over 16 years old. There were laws in the countryside. Surprisingly, despite the chaos of the Cultural Revolution, some rules remained in place. The commune militia had made it clear. Zhang Guoping's past violence, record, history, everything had caught up to him, and this time he would be severely punished. As Zhang Guoping disappeared, a strange emptiness settled inside me. A part of me should have felt relieved. Zhang Guoping was gone. I wouldn't have to sit next to him for the first time in years. Wouldn't have to monitor his every move. Wouldn't have to prepare for battle every day. But instead of relief, a dull ache formed in my chest. Something closer to regret. Something closer to loss. Is this my life? What is my lesson here? What is there to learn?